former president, and now the race moves to New Hampshire, the first in the nation primary. That is 1 week away. Let's bring in California GOP Chairwoman Patterson. Any surprises tonight? I mean, clearly, everybody I've talked to said, yep, I was a little bit surprised.
Yeah, I think what we saw today is what we've been saying for a long time. The only poll that matters is the one that happens on Election Day.
Right.
And legitimately, President Trump ran away with it tonight. The biggest margin before was 12 points, beating their nearest opponent.
Right.
And he more than doubled that.
Yeah.
We see paths for both Ambassador Haley and Governor DeSantis, and they're running forward with that. He is going to take the South Carolina route. She is going to move on to New Hampshire, where she thinks she has a great chance to win there. So there's still more to go, right? This was only 40 delegates tonight.
Yeah, I'm going to play devil's advocate for just 2 seconds here, because do the Iowa caucuses predict that you are going to be the president? Put this up on the screen. The last is in 2000, George W. Bush was the only one who won the Iowa caucuses. This is in the past 50 years, and actually went on to become president. That's not saying it doesn't have. They put a lot of money into Iowa because there's a reason. But it's interesting that it really hasn't been the bellwether that people thought it was going to be 75 years ago.
It is a great momentum builder.
Yeah.
And that is what is important. It is important that you show up. It is important that you make a difference. I remember working for Rudy Giuliani in 2008. We were the front runner until people started voting. You can't let Iowa and New Hampshire be on the sidelines. You have to show up, and that makes a difference. President Biden is the only president that's ever been elected without winning either one of those states.
Yeah, and we'd be remiss if we said, listen, Nikki Haley had a great night, because she didn't. She was below 20%. I mean, she's still in the running. She's still in there, but it was not the night that Nikki Haley or her campaign wanted.
She's definitely a fighter, and we're going to see Nikki Haley take this to New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. New Hampshire was always going to be her big state, and she thinks she can win there. So we'll see what happens over the next week.
She was polling ahead of Ron DeSantis going into this caucus tonight. Ron DeSantis came out on top.
Ground games absolutely matter.
Yeah.
And we saw that Governor DeSantis was really building out his ground game and making sure that those people showed up. So regardless of what the weather looked like, they were strong, they were committed, they were showing up for him.
But we were told that old people are the ones who predominantly were the ones that would not show up because it's too cold, they don't want to get there. The older people vote for Donald Trump, and yet his turnout was stupendous.
Donald Trump has every single demographic covered. There are people from every single age bracket that are voting for President Trump.
Yeah. Do you think that he shows really well or better in New Hampshire next week because of his showing here? Okay.
I think Iowa is important for momentum. So we'll see what happens with the donor money and how that falls, because that will be a good indicator for these candidates as well.
I got to go. Vivek Ramaswamy dropping out. Do you suspect that? Did you expect that at all?
Yeah, I think everybody was seeing no one was discussing him as much as they were 6 months ago.
Yeah. Patterson, back to you. The next hour. Another hour of Fox News at Night is straight ahead. More voter analysis and what comes next for all. 1 week away. Let's bring in California GOP Chairwoman Patterson with that. It's kind of fascinating. The Washington Post said the following here, brand new, just off the presses. It's quoting here, the last remnants of the Republican Party died in Iowa. It's fair to ask whether the candidates wasted their time even coming to Iowa. Trump skipped the debates and did minimal campaigning here. And the old notion that retail politics in Iowa can propel little-known candidates to glory seemed no longer to apply. It was never a contest.
Iowa matters. Democracy matters, and
right.
The people voting matter. And that's why this is important. We need to make sure, and we saw this field has narrowed down significantly over the last 11 months, and will continue to narrow down as we get through more of these contests.
Right, and that's the whole thing, and that's how democracy works, right? You go out there and you battle, and if you lose, sometimes you pull out or you go on to the next battleground. It's like football. And the whole thing is that during his speech tonight, the former president said that we need to get rid of mail-in ballots. And my thing would be, doesn't the former president need to embrace mail-in ballots and anything that can get votes into the various precincts?
I think what you've seen from President Trump, he has already endorsed the Bank the Vote program. And this is something that's critical. We need to make sure that, taking your football analogy, we're not just playing in the last quarter. We got to play all 3 quarters. And in places like California, we have an entire month of voting. And if you allow only Democrats to turn in their ballots in that month, you are playing at a disadvantage.
Yeah. Nikki Haley's campaign tonight, were you somewhat disappointed at the numbers? Was she somewhat disappointed? Do you think that she looks at that like, it's a bump in the road? She was polling to come in ahead of Ron DeSantis, and she came 2 points, a little more than 2 points behind. It's a big number when you're only talking about 21%, 19%.
I think Ambassador Haley is a fighter.
Okay.
And I think what you're going to see in New Hampshire is that same type of infrastructure that Governor DeSantis built in Iowa, she has in New Hampshire. She thinks she really has a shot to win this, and she's going to be working hard over this next week to make that happen.
Okay, so Ron DeSantis is going to go right to South Carolina first. Maybe he goes up to New Hampshire after that. He's going to South Carolina. He's kind of banking on South Carolina, which is her home state. So let's say you're right, and Nikki Haley comes in second in New Hampshire, and then Ron DeSantis is in South Carolina. What happens down in South Carolina, and how far does this keep going?
We'll see a collection of these delegates, right? Tonight was only 40 delegates. In California alone, we have over 160 delegates, right? So the delegate number is what's going to matter. You're going to see if the money continues to follow them, whether or not they're going to be able to continue their campaigns.
Will this go beyond Super Tuesday, or you think Super Tuesday is pretty much it?
I think Super Tuesday is going to be a big ticket day. When you have states like California and Texas, the most in the nation, that's going to be a huge day, and I think we should have a pretty good indicator of who our nominee is going to be.
It'll be interesting to see that what court date Trump goes to and what state he goes to after the court date on March 4th, because Super Tuesday, of course, is March 5th. With that, Chairwoman Patterson, it's great to have you on as always. We appreciate it and all. And thank you for watching America's Late News, Fox News at Night. I'm Trace Gallagher in Los Angeles. That ends our continuing coverage of the Iowa caucuses. Micah